Okay, so I'm pointing out what I'm going to do to the board here, and I had to throw out the audio. That's my speed square from Harbor Freight. It's a 12-inch, along with a piece of yellow chalk. This was a super windy day, and there was just too much microphone noise, so I have to do a voiceover here. But what I'm showing is a board that I showed in a different video that has some bark there on the edges. You lose a lot of thickness on those edges under the bark because it's angled. It's also, the bark tends to be really dirty, and it's probably a good idea to kind of cut it off with dumb tools before you start working with your good steel. And so I flipped it over because that's my setup. You don't want to cut every day like this because it'll be tough on your knees and your back, but I just needed to cut down some of the longer hardwood pieces I had in this storage space, which was it's a drive up space, and so it was handy for the bigger pieces, but I'm moving into an inside space. And so by cutting the wood down, and I check to see if this saw is actually sharp. I've never actually used it before, and it seemed like it could be sharp, and so I try it for a little bit. And it's a Western style push saw, and if it cut in a hurry, that would have been great, but it didn't. And so at that point I realized it's bad video, and I give up, and I switch to a Japanese style saw. The Japanese saw doesn't have a back or a spine on it to keep it rigid. You can see how flexible it is. A lot of those saws that you pick up tend to be meant for working with softer woods, and you can use them on hardwoods, but you may find they have a tendency to wobble or kind of wander in the wood with that flexibility. This one has a large kind of single teeth meant for ripping the length of the board, and I'm explaining the saw. And then there's another side that has a lot more teeth, and that's meant for cross-cutting. So as you can see, it will have this, if it gets hung up, it will kind of twist and flex, but it won't hang on to that bend. It won't deform the saw blade. But you have to take light cuts, and it cuts on the pull stroke. So you want to kind of, I'm using it a little too much like a Western style saw, but it's meant to be a two-handed saw, and so I'm checking to see how it works. But here I am using it two-handed so I can get a better pull on the cut, and so it's cutting much more quickly this way. And it's the bucket tops are a little slick, and so it's sliding around a bit. I'm going to do some videos about using the buckets a little bit more effectively, and that was initially the plan, so I could start my Absolute Flipping Zero series, but I couldn't find my Absolute Flipping Zero shirt, so I'm going to stick with the Flipping Idiot style right now. So anyways, that is cut down, and so it easily will fit into my vehicle with the rear hatch closed, which makes it easier to store it. And then I decide I'm going to start using the battery-powered circular saw. So the reason I brought out the old Western saw and was hoping it would work is that if you need to work with wood, simply making the wood smaller in advance of a project, you can rough cut it so it's easier to store, it's easier to carry, it's easier to control. Your bench doesn't need to be as big and whatever. The idea is that if you keep it a little bit bigger, you can manage it a lot more easily. But if you have power tools, I'm showing how that will just zip through a cut. And if battery powered tools are too expensive for you, usually you can find the used circular saws with cords for less than $40 or $50, which may or may not be a lot of money for you. But if you have been using really bad hand tools, it's worth the investment, because a powered circular saw will cross-cut those boards in a matter of seconds, which I'll show you in a little bit. So that is me kind of running through the tools and saying thanks for watching this part. So I will move on to the next segment here. Okay, so this also suffered because it sounds like a big tin can. I'm in there and you couldn't really hear me. But I'm going to speed up the video, and what I do is I just run through and make a note to myself basically about where I want to cut these boards. And so I'm using the chalk to just let myself know in a couple minutes where I need to set up that speed square for using the power saw to cut it, the battery powered circular saw. It has to be battery powered because I can't bring, there's nowhere to plug in, so I can't use a cord. So I'm just, as I mentioned, just quickly making kind of notes to finalize where I think the best place to cut the lumber is so I can move it, and we're ready to move on. Okay, so here I am grabbing my circular saw to speed things up. Again, you don't need a battery powered saw. You can find really inexpensive used circular saws in thrift shops. Just make sure you test it before you buy it. I'm using that speed square to guide the blade, and so I don't really need to have a perfect mark because that big edge on the speed square will help me create a nice 90-degree cut. And then you're seeing me hold the board up a little bit more here with the hand holding the square to keep it from binding. On this one, I was about to set up, I was about to make the cut, but then I start talking about I think I'll keep that grain rather than make a skinny board that kind of goes alongside the knot. I'll keep the full width. I'll cut through the knot, and then I'll have that super swirly grain at the end of projects down the road. So here you're going to see me kind of, it's going to cut. It's really hard wood, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up the saw and let it kind of skim through the cut to reduce the amount it's cutting. And then I'm going to pick up the board to keep it from binding, and that will free it up to cut all the way through. And so that is, here I am showing what I did was I kind of lifted it a little bit out of the cut to finish it. And then here's a close-up shot of what it's like for the saw shoe to track along the speed square and how easy it is to make portable cuts with a circular saw. Once again, the board kind of sagged down and grabbed the blade, but no big deal. I'll just finish the cut here, flipping the board and just making a final cleanup cut. Okay, so the shorter cutoffs ended up on top of a dresser here that's going to get worked on and situated. The fuller pieces, the longer pieces, cherry is there. I think that's whatever, white oak, some kind of oak. There's some pine I brought in earlier. And then here's the ash. Yeah, the white ash stuff you'll recognize. So it's cut. It's easy to handle. I can put it in my vehicle. I can close the gate. This big one, this will get cut into pieces and turned into legs. Okay, you'll see behind me I've got my wood all set up. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. That helps me and all YouTubers out. And so one thing to consider is always leave yourself as much extra wood as you can as it makes sense. Don't turn in a bunch of extra wood that requires sanding and other stuff, but give yourself some room and figure out how your design is going to call for the wood that you have sitting around, or go get more if you need to. But anyways, thanks again for watching, and like and subscribe to see what I do with all this stuff.